Good morning, boys and girls, and welcome to the southern wing of the Stink Bug Works. This morning, before I go any further, let me say, excuse me while I whip this out. Why, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that looks like a gear drive unit, and it looks like there's a bit of a Q-tip as a pointer, and it's almost, but not quite, pointing at where the stuffing tube needs to exit. I'm thinking this thing might be a little bit big, but I have two workarounds. I can alter the gear ratio slightly by putting on a smaller pinion. I have that much room that I can swing over and move this motor over. And I do have a couple of smaller gears. I think I'm running a 2940, and I might be able to go as low as a 2540. So I've got a 28 and a 26 somewhere up in the shelves there that I could use. Anyway, this thing's all together. I'll go over the structural changes. This thing's all together, and I wanted to test it out and see how it works. So before I go any further, let me get another sip of coffee. And we're going to talk about the theory of modern electronics. Now, let me see. Do I have here's a perfect pointer. This is an old Aviox SL18 speed control. This was one of their first sensorless ones. And I took a heat sink, and I wrapped some aluminum tubes on and glued them on with thermal conductive epoxy, but that's another story. We're going to talk about what makes an electronic device work. And if you look closely, there's a black box here, there's a black box here, and there's several little tiny different boxes of different colors here. And there's some more different colored boxes there. And here's a bigger box, and here's a box, and here's a little tube. And if you look in here, there's another layer of boxes right there that this thing's glued to. So the people that design and engineer these things, they want to baffle you with techno jargon. They talk about things like millivolts and inductance and henries and cycles and stuff like that. That's nonsense. That's just a bunch of bullshit that they tell you to convince you that you can't figure this out. How these things work is based on the scientific principle called magic. Now, what they do when they make these little boxes, they have big vessels of magic smoke, and they pump these little boxes full of that magic smoke. I mean, it's packed in there. All these little boxes and these tubes and such, they're filled with magic smoke. And so everything is fine as long as you don't let the magic smoke out. If you let the magic smoke out, they just don't work anymore. And you can see it, and you can smell it. Now, let's go back to my big old unit here. Well, when you get something together like this, what's the first thing you want to do? Well, let's run it up and see how it sounds. Well, what do I have that I can control the speed on? Because I don't want this thing flailing around at full speed. Something gets in here and there goes your finger. So I just want to run it up a little bit. And I say, hey, I have the Sky RC motor analyzer. You hook it up to your motor, plug a battery in it, you go over here to KV, and you can turn it up. And you can turn it up just to a low RPM to see how it runs. Well, I did that. And here's the problem I ran into. This is a super high performance motor. I mean, it's super high performance. These wires right here, that's the winding that goes around there. There's only a handful of wraps of this great big wire on each pole going around there. And so what happens is this wire is so big and so short that there's almost no resistance. Now, a modern speed control like this, it can sense that resistance. It goes, oh, I know what I have here. I got me a little hot rod here. Let me give you some amps, buddy. And so this works just fine. This, on the other hand, quite frankly, was designed for the car enthusiast who wasn't running idiotic motors like this. And so for most motors, this works just fine. But hooked up to this, the motor analyzer said, that ain't no motor. That's a dead short, boy. And so instead of seeing a motor, it saw a dead short. And when it sees dead shorts, it lets the magic smoke out. And so now, this has that wonderful burnt aroma. So, what did I learn? I learned that this motor analyzer is fine for, motors like this, but questionable for motors like this. I finally did fire it up with this speed control, and everything was fine and dandy. It's smooth as a baby's butt. Although it is real torquey and it wants to, but there we are. It might be a tight fit in here. I can drop the gear ratio, means a bigger prop, but I can drop the gear ratio a little bit, which really wouldn't hurt. I've got this thing turning about 4,000 RPM per volt. You know what? I can tell you exactly how many RPM per volt. If you take, turn it on, and you take 29, if you take 29 divided by 40 equals that much, and you multiply that by 5,500 equals, so this is now the equivalent of 4,000 kV. That's still on the high side, on the fun high side. I mean, at 4,000 kV, this thing will be pretty good on 2S. But I'm thinking more like 3750 kV. So let's try something. If I put on a 25 tooth cog, so I would have 25 divided by 40 times 5,500 equals. So that would be 37, so 3,500 RPM per volt. So probably a 26, 27, 28 tooth pinion gear, and I have some of those. Some are on order, some are on hand, but I have 26, 27s, and 28s. So that's what I may do for KV. That'll move the motor a little bit. I can move this. I may still have to take a bite out of there. I can probably clear this lip because the fiberglass right here is fairly thin. Right here it's kind of thick, but I think I can get past that. So it's going to be tight clearances in here, and I am making a simple project more complicated. Why? Because I can, and to give you guys some ideas that when you stumble into a problem, you go, well, how could I solve this? Oh, I saw Dr. Jet make a gearbox. Yeah, I could put a gearbox in it that'll move this over here and it'll work. So, while Big B, he gives you the meat and potatoes and he shows you the straightforward and most reasonable approach, I give you the salsa and guacamole, some of the oddball stuff. Food for thought. Big B gives you food for the soul. I give you food for thought. Until next time, boys and girls, jet out.